Hey everybody, Dr. Dan here, and I'm your professor for Western Civilization to 1555 here at Jackson College. So I just want to introduce myself, welcome everybody, talk briefly about the class and how to get in touch with me and that sort of thing, and then we'll move along to our first assignment. So it's Western Civilization to 1555. So Western Civ is also known as Atlantic history at a lot of colleges. And so what we're going to be studying is the basis, the historical basis for Western civilization. So what's Western civilization? Basically, it's Europe, modern Europe, United States, South America, all the countries in the West. All right, so it really is in opposition to or different than Asian history. So we're not going to talk about China or Japan, or we're not going to talk about India, and we're not going to talk much about the Middle East, although we will at the beginning because it all kind of starts there. But Western history is unique, or Western civilization is unique, because it's really the study of sort of Western culture, Western ideas, whether it comes to religion, Christianity, politics, the way our government's set up, art, literature. There's a Western tradition. And as a historian, it's kind of cool to look at society today and go backwards and say, okay, where did all these things come from? Where did this idea for a democracy, for example, where did this start? So that's what Western Civ is about, and that's why it's kind of cool. Now, at the same time, if you're a student and you're really not into history and you look at a Western Civ book, you're like, oh my God, this is going to be awful. So again, this is the book. But this is a nice book because it's kind of short. And our class is Western Civilization to 1555. So we're covering, I think the book starts at like 3000 BC. So we're covering like 4,500 years in 15 weeks. So obviously we don't have a lot of time to spend in all these eras. And so as a history teacher, I don't really believe in making you remember all the names and all the dates in the book or in the story, even though they're fascinating. These are things you're not going to remember a week after school, so it's kind of silly to tax your brain with them. So we're going to kind of look at the big things, and what's important to me as a history teacher is making connections between past and present, because otherwise it's just like boring. So that's one of the things I'll do a lot when we're talking about the text. When I'm asking you questions, I'm going to want you to make connections to the present. I want to make this approachable and relatable, and it'll make it a little bit easier for us to digest as we go along, because the last thing we want to do is say, hey, why are we studying this? And the reason we're studying it is it'll help us understand our current society. The other reason we're studying it is because it helps you understand history, and it helps you understand something called critical thinking, which I'll talk about again in a little bit. So again, my name is Dan French. Most people call me Dr. Dan. You can call me whatever you want. I work here at Jackson College teaching this online class. I also work at the University of Toledo, where I teach 2 classes, and I work full-time at Mercy College of Ohio in Toledo, which is a healthcare school. So I work with a lot of nurses and rad tech people and healthcare majors, and I'm an administrator at Mercy College of Ohio. So I'm well-rounded. I can relate to what all of you are going through, regardless of your majors. So feel free to reach out at any time. My phone number, again, is 419-345-7220. That's my cell. You can call me anytime, or you can text me. That's cool. Just let me know who you are, and let me know that you're from Jackson, because I'll get you mixed up with another student somewhere else. So feel free to reach out. My email is frenchdaniela@jccmi.edu. So you can certainly email me anytime, and if you have questions or concerns, then I can help you out. So how to navigate the class. When you look at the course homepage, you'll see there is some stuff at the very top of the page, and then we get into modules. I think most of you have probably had an online course before, so I don't need to go through the details. We're going to get in right into Module 1, where you're going to read Chapter 1 of the book. So you'll need to make sure you have the book right away. Before you get into Chapter 1 and Module 1, there's an introduce yourself forum or discussion area where you should introduce yourself. You get points for doing it, actually. So, tell us a little bit about yourself as much as you're comfortable with. Share that with the class. We're trying to build community, I guess. And also keep in mind that the modules are where the work's going to be done. So there's a chapter in every module. Some chapters are pretty long. So like I think Module 3, Greek, the Greek module is really long. I apologize, but that's the way it is, and that'll be a tough one. But most of them are fairly short and straightforward. In each module, there will be an activity. There might be a discussion board. There might be a quiz or a mini quiz. There might be an assignment. So there's going to be some work to do. You're going to need to keep up with it. And I also put in each chapter what I call Dr. Dan's reading notes. So just sort of a secret between you and me. When I read the text, I make notes as I go. I highlight stuff and I make notes. Those are the things that I feel are important or at least interesting. And those are the things, if we have a quiz or a test, that you should know. And I even put page numbers down. So if you're reading, open up my notes, print them out. You can jot down, make annotations, make notes on my page, and that will help you pull out what I'm looking for. And I think also, I hope, stuff that's important to you. So again, I'm always trying to make these connections between past and present, and often when I make notes, that's what the notes are about. The other thing before you start, and I'm kind of looking at my computer screen here, you should know what the difference is between anthropology and history. And I normally don't talk about that, but since we're going back to 3000 BC, 2000 BC, a really long time ago, a lot of this sort of seems like anthropology or archaeology. And the difference is that anthropologists really look at human origin, development, and behavior. So they're really looking more at artifacts, physical characteristics, cultures, and language, and it's more of a scientific study. Archaeology, for example, is an offshoot of anthropology. So, digging stuff up, looking at artifacts, trying to discern what the culture was all about. Whereas history or historians, we look at documents, generally texts, sometimes other artifacts, and try to put a narrative together. So we're really more concerned with political events, warfare, and society at large. So there is a difference between the two, but at the beginning, when we talk about Mesopotamia and the very early cultures in Western civilization, that's really where history and anthropology really kind of come together. So you should know what that is, no big deal there. Also, really important, know the difference between a primary and a secondary source. So historians count on documents, and a primary source is a document that was written by someone who was at the actual historical event. So if we're writing about a war and there was a soldier or a warrior who was writing and writing a story about what happened, then that's definitely a primary source. If a government official is writing about something that happened in a meeting or in Congress, that's a primary source. Whereas a secondary source might be the work of another historian who's writing a narrative based on primary sources. So understand there's some differences there. Almost everything we're looking at is going to be primary sources in this class, and our textbook is a good example of a secondary source document, so that's kind of puts it in perspective. Primary sources aren't necessarily always true. It's just one person's perspective of an event. So everyone's got sort of a lens they look through, or they might be kind of biased towards an event. So primary sources can be biased. And oftentimes as historians, we have to look at several primary sources to kind of put together the story of what really happened, or at least try to figure out as close as we can to as what really happened. So know the difference between primary sources and secondary sources. That's important, and we'll look at primary sources all the time. So in order for a primary source to be, I guess, credible or relevant, you have to know who wrote it. You have to make sure it's authentic. So is it using the right language for the period? Does it appear to be old enough for the period? Is it consistent with the period? Those types of things kind of give us the context for the primary source. And I mentioned critical thinking before, figuring out that these sources have different intent, or they're written with different lenses or with different angles. That's part of critical thinking. as a historian or just as a good citizen, you don't want to believe everything you read. You want to consider the source. You've probably heard that before. And it's like, why is this person writing this way? Are they biased? Do they really know what's going on? Or are they trying to push their own agenda through a written document? So enough about that. The first week of class, Module 1, it's the week that you're watching this. We have to read Chapter 1 of the book. There's a couple of activities in Module 1, so you'll need to go ahead and get started on those. I have taught online for many years, but I've never used Moodle before or JetNet. So if you find anything that's not working or anything that's wrong, just send me a text or shoot me an email and I'll fix it. I think I have everything working right, but you never know. So stay in touch from that standpoint. And I think that's it for now. Western Civ is cool because just one other thing. So, why are we going to read about Hebrews and Greeks and Romans? There's so much stuff in there that is directly relatable to today, like directly relatable to Christianity, relatable to democracy, our form of government. I mean, James Madison, Tom Jefferson, those guys were all reading Aristotle, and they were all reading Plato, and so when we get into like Greek culture especially, you're going to say, wow, this sounds just like the U.S. today. So that's one of the things about Western Civ that's really cool, how these historical events transcend upward to our society today. So that's why it's cool. Seems boring, isn't. We're not going to worry too much about the details and all the names, but the people that are important to remember, I will let you know. So again, I've talked long enough. I just wanted to introduce myself. Feel free to get in touch. Again, it's 419-345-7220. Reach out to me at any time, and I will see you again soon in Module 1. Thanks. Have a great day, and I hope we have a great semester.